Ron, welcome. How are you this morning?
I'm just great. How are you doing, Neal and Julie?
You know what? Stop talking or I'm calling the cops.
Wait, I think I figured out a new buzzword that really rankles the legislators. It's called crony.
Yeah, apparently. Okay, so, Ron, this was our take. Julie and I actually watched this video for the first time together, and earlier off the air this morning. And the link had been sent to me, and they said, you should watch this to the very end. And I was shocked at how quickly it escalated, that you have a problem with the governor's launch bill and program because you feel like it does reward his political friends and his donors. And that kind of is the definition of cronyism. And then you didn't give any specifics, but then you were asked by Senator Lenny after your remarks, what do you mean by that? And then at that point, in answering the question, you did get specific, but you were citing what another lawmaker had said. And that's when all hell broke loose, for lack of a better term. There were objections. Then Kevin Cook called the cops on you to come over and escort you from the podium. What happened?
I don't know. I was asked the question, and I gave the answer that was, you're right, I was quoting Megan Blanksma, the House sponsor of the bill, and she said, hey, this bill works for Doug Sayer. And when Doug Sayer needs welders, this bill makes sure the welders are trained for him. Well, I looked up Doug Sayer. He runs Premier Technologies, and Premier Technologies gave $25,000 to the Friends of Little PAC just in January. And how does this not look like payback when she's actually citing his name? But I have a list of workforce development council members who are going to oversee this fund. And gosh, $100,000 to Friends of Little PAC, $5,000 here, $20,000 there. They're all giving money to Brad Little and establishment candidates. And I can't help but think that this is a payoff to their good behavior in campaigns.
And if not a payoff, at the very least, it is optically a big conflict of interest that needs to be addressed. But let's get right down to that moment where Kevin Cook, the Chairman Cook, I should say, repeatedly said, "That's good, that's good, that's good." What was your perception of? Because that's good can mean a lot of different things. It's kind of euphemistic, and in this case, it certainly was. He was basically saying, you need to be quiet. Instead of saying, you need to be quiet, he said, that's good. So I guess what was your perception of it all?
Well, frankly, in the moment, I was just thinking, okay, he was satisfied with my answer, but I wasn't done. I had a little bit more to say, and so I was continuing on. Then it went from that's good to officer come up, and I had no idea. Frankly, until I looked at the video, I had no idea that the officer was behind me. I didn't know that he had walked up behind me. But I just okay, I answered the question. He calls in the officer, and I'm like, does that mean I'm done? He says, yes. I go, okay. Well, it sounded like he was very sensitive to anything being brought up about why this bill is there. It was a disproportionate reaction to just a simple answer to a question, I thought.
Yeah.
Ron, who said they object? Who on the committee was the one who objected while you were talking about the cronyism?
I'm not really sure. It was on my left. It was either Senator Lakey or Senator Ruckty. I object, and I think he objected because I mentioned that donors to Brad Little's campaign were the ones mentioned. So
okay, so are now an objection typically means that you're saying something that's not allowed according to the rules. Were you allowed? I mean, were you violating some rule that they had? I guess I don't understand. They asked you the question, you gave the answer, and then they objected. So I'm wondering, did you violate some kind of decorum rule that they have in the Senate?
Well, one of the rules, and I don't know if this applies to testifiers, but it certainly applies to legislators, is you're not supposed to attribute motives or impugn the motives of the supporters of a bill or something like that. But I wasn't talking about the supporters of the bill. I was talking about those who contributed to the campaign are the ones benefiting from this particular bill. And so if they're sensitive that was somehow attributing motives, it can only be because there's something to that.
Well, my feeling is, Ron, and I'll ask you this question. Have you heard from any of those senators on the committee? Have they kind of reached out to kind of clarify what happened in that room?
No, I don't expect them to. I just people see it for what it is. They see. I showed it to my son, and my son, he's not steeped in Idaho politics. He lives in Utah right now, and he looked at it. He goes, "That looks really bad for the committee chair and for them, because as soon as you started talking about the what might be behind the bill, they wanted to shut you down and called up an officer. It really looks sketch for them."
Yeah, it does. I mean, it feels. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times to kind of get my mind around it, but it absolutely felt like a big overreaction.
I think so too. And so, you know what? I'll grant some grace here. Maybe in the moment he overreacted. Maybe he heard it differently than the way I said it. And so I'll move on. I'll write my article and expose the whole truth. And I encourage everyone to call their senators and tell them to vote against this crony bill. H-24 is a payback for a lot of Brad Little's good donors. And by the way, it's bad policy too. It's socialist. It's borders on communist to try and direct kids to the career that some council thinks they ought to be in, rather than what's best for them.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ron, we appreciate you reaching out to kind of clarify and give us your perspective. We'll probably reach out to Senator Cook and try to get his perspective as well. So, Ron, thank you.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Thank you, Neal and